Act for changing the board structure. The first is for the voting entity to voluntarily appoint fewer members, and the second is to reallocate seats based on gross cost of service. Staff already reviewed the potential impact of using gross cost of service per jurisdiction and reported that this method only further exacerbates the voting inequity. So the board decided to create an ad hoc committee to review options for changing the board structure. At the January 10th meeting, Chair Miller appointed himself, Directors Valenzuela, Hume, Budge, Natoli, and Howell. All member jurisdictions of the Srtp board were represented in the ad hoc committee with one member each. And we want to thank our ad hoc committee members for their engagement and active participation. We've had very productive meetings at the committee meetings held on January 24th and January 31st. During this meeting, staff presented additional information for the committee's review, including the structure of comparable transit agencies, transit revenue and competitive funding by jurisdiction, as well as the legislative timeline should the board decide to make modifications to Srtp's Enabling Act. There was also an extensive discussion at the meetings about a population-based structure. And after a thorough deliberation, allow me to read to you the final motion that was voted on and approved by the ad hoc committee to amend Srtp's enabling legislation. The County of Sacramento will have an additional seat, or 4 total, and the City of Elk Grove will have an additional seat, or 2 total, on the Srtp Board of Directors. The City of Sacramento can appoint an alternate, but they must be an elected official. The board must revisit seat allocation no less than every 10 years, but it must happen if and when Yolo or West Sacramento annex to Srtp, or whenever a member jurisdiction has had a significant population increase or decrease or change to their landscape. The maximum size of the Srtp board will be 13 members. While this motion only proposed having an alternate for the City of Sacramento, staff recommends that the board add to the final motion the option to also have an alternate for the County of Sacramento to reflect the committee's intent during the discussions. If the board accepts this modification, since the Board of Supervisors will have 4 of its 5 members sit on the Srtp board under this proposed new structure, the county will appoint as a common alternate the only member of the County Board of Supervisors who is not a Srtp board member. Staff believes that this motion addresses the main issues that were brought up about the diminished voting power of the county, giving them 4 seats total, or the equivalent of 36% of the total votes, as compared to the old structure that gave them 32%. This also satisfies Elk Grove's request for additional representation based on their population relative to Folsom, Citrus Heights, and Rancho Cordova. Based upon the final motion to be approved by the full board tonight, staff will work on a legislative initiative to effectuate the board structure changes. And I am pleased to report that Assemblymember Ken Cooley already agreed to author and carry a bill in the legislature to clean up Srtp's Enabling Act language. And thanks to Chair Miller for engaging with Assemblymember Cooley on this. The deadline to introduce bills for this legislative cycle is February 18th. And if the full board approves a motion to change the structure tonight, the approved changes will be incorporated in the cleanup bill and will be submitted during this year's legislative cycle. And that concludes my summary, and our General Counsel and I are available if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valentin. Any questions? I see Phil's got his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the staff report, and thanks to our colleagues who served on the ad hoc committee for giving of their time and thoughtfulness to this. I have a question about one other aspect of our current system and whether or not it was discussed in committee or not, and that is the fact that when we have members that are absent but representing the same jurisdiction, the votes transfer over to that member, that director. So in the case of what has been proposed tonight, for instance, if you only had one member of the Board of Supervisors present at a meeting, would the other 3 members of the board transfer to that one attending county representative director? And I'm not sure who wants to field that question.
This is Olga. I can answer that. No. So when we changed the legislation, when 1196 was adopted, the language that basically transferred votes from, let's say, for all the county members or the city of Sacramento members, that language was removed because it was part of the weighted voting structure. So there is no language presently in our Enabling Act that allows for that. The only option is alternates, but alternates currently are only available to the jurisdictions that just have one seat. It's not something that's available to the city of Sacramento or the county of Sacramento. So that's why we had the discussion about allowing alternates for the city of Sacramento and the county of Sacramento in case the sitting member cannot attend, they can have their alternate attend in their place. So yeah, no, but no, there was no discussion about putting.
And I understand that nuance, Olga. But for a jurisdiction like Sacramento County, even if we had that fifth member of our board as an alternate, and let's say you had two missing county directors at a meeting, we would have no opportunity to have the number of alternates necessary to fulfill the county's presence, correct?
Correct. Yeah, unless you had alternates and you were allowed to appoint non-elected official alternates so that each of you could appoint someone, like, let's say you could appoint your chief of staff to be your alternate, correct?
Right.
But
now, is that something that in the course of debate and exchange tonight we could establish?
Yeah, I mean, the board could add that to their motion. And I believe that Director Valenzuela proposed something like that in the committee, in the subcommittee meetings, but it didn't make the final cut. But it doesn't mean that the full board can't decide to do something like that.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to just kind of put it out there through the chair that it seems to me that if the single voting jurisdiction members are able to satisfy in whole a missing director by way of another alternate who would conceivably be present at a meeting, that the same should be available for the county of Sacramento. And obviously, the county is unique here for a few different reasons. Number one, we only have 5 total members. Number two, we would have under this construct, I believe, 4 total county supervisors that would serve as RT directors. So it seems to me that we'd want to have a commensurate number of alternates and figure out a way to do that by way of setting some criteria around who we could appoint, whether that be our chiefs or other elected officials not serving obviously on the board of supervisors. It's done that way for other commissions and authorities, notably the library authority, I believe, permits at least members of the board of supervisors to appoint their alternates as elected officials, but from other jurisdictions. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
You're Director Serna. I've got Director Jennings followed by Director Chenier with their hands up.
Thank you very much. I too want to thank the ad hoc for the work that they've done on this. And I want to have a further discussion on the alternates as well. So I want to be very clear on that. I think I heard in the conversation that alternate must be an elected official. So I just want to be clear on that. But I also want to be clear on whether it has to be from the same jurisdiction or can it be from any elected body. So, but we'll have a further conversation on that. The question I had that popped up was full board approval tonight. I heard that at the end. Did I hear that correctly? That we need, in order to move this forward, we need full board approval?
Yeah, this is just a recommendation, Rick,
Okay.
from the committee.
So this would be under our current voting, the weighted voted system. So even if Councilmember Harris, for instance, is missing, the rest of the board can vote on his behalf. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
Thank you.
So without Councilmember Harris being here, would we still be able to obtain full board approval?
Yeah, what that means is that you have a majority of you have a quorum, which you have present, and you have a majority of the quorum vote in favor.
Okay, that's my question, because I just wanted to make sure it wasn't that all 11 members had to be here in order to vote. So.
Oh, right.
That's
Just a quorum.
Yeah, okay, good. That answers my question. Thank you.
Director Chenier.
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to the alternate piece. Under, Olga, I think this is for you, under the current recommendation from the ad hoc for the city, so we would have one alternate, correct?
Yeah, under the current recommendation, the way it read, the way it was adopted was that there would be one alternate for the city.
And would that alternate be for anyone who couldn't come, or would that alternate only be for a specific person?
No, it would be for anybody who couldn't come.
Okay.
Which is one structure. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to keep that structure. That was the recommendation. You could come up with.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear on what the recommendation was. So I'll kind of want to follow Mr. Srtp on this. I think we should have the ability to have multiple alternates. So for the city, if we have 4 positions, I think we should have 4 alternates so that you're always at your potential on number of votes. I think that's fair given what we're doing with the other cities. And I don't know necessarily the rationale for it having to be an elected official. I kind of see this as a potential to bring others in who have expertise, which would, I think, increase some of the knowledge base of the board itself. So I don't know when we're getting to it, but my feeling would be that for the city itself and however Mr. Srtp wants to look at it for the county, that we have the number of alternates as positions, but that the alternates do not have to be elected officials. Then I'm happy to come back to that later with a motion.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else looking for hands?
Linda's hand is up, Chair.
They didn't slide. She didn't slide onto my screen. Go ahead, Linda.
Thanks, Steve. So on the one hand, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with each member of the city council of Sacramento or the Board of Supervisors having an alternate. But on the other hand, I do want to support Jay's comment about not necessarily making it an elected official, because I was probably the only one who thought that returning to having non-elected but knowledgeable people on the RT board has certainly served this organization well in the past and should be considered today. So, Phil's point, whether it's your chief of staff or whether it is some other person that who happens to be a transit advocate or something like that, then I would definitely support that.
Thank you, Director Budge. Oh, I see the hand now. Go ahead,
Valenzuela.
Director Valenzuela.
Thank you. And just wanted to let Director Budge know she was not the only one. I agree wholeheartedly and really do believe and want to lift up some of the comments we received before this meeting from some advocates, frankly, that have been doing this since long before I was elected. I think I first met Barbara Stanton when I was in grad school, actually, at UC Davis. So these are folks that spend a considerable amount of time and energy working on these issues. And not to say it would be Barbara per se, but I really think it should be up to the appointing jurisdiction to decide who they think is best. And having that flexibility just makes the most sense to me. If somebody feels super strongly that it should be an elected official, appoint an elected official. But I think that having that flexibility is just a really great asset. So we're supporting that move forward tonight. Thank you for bringing it forward.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make a motion unless you have others willing to.
We have some members of the public that are
We do.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that. So let's do public comment, then we'll make a motion.
I'm just thinking anytime budget, I agree, we should just go forward.
What's that?
Anytime Linda and I agree on something, we should just go forward.
I'm laughing.
Ms. Clerk Tabitha, do we have public comment?
Okay, I have one email public comment from Barbara Stanton, and it looks like to Jeff Tartagia and Dan Allison have their hands raised.
Okay, do you want to put the written comment up?
Yeah, it looks like Director Chenier and Srtp both have their hands up again. I don't know
After
if you want
public
to.
comment.
It was for public comment?
No, after. Go ahead.
Oh, after public comment. Okay. Okay, so the email public comment from Barbara Stanton. Good evening, Chair Miller and directors. Ridership for the masses supports a board composition to include non-elected community members. We support the Sacramento City and Sacramento County to set up a SAC-RT board announcement where members of the public can apply to serve on the SAC-RT board, just like they do for other city and county boards and commissions. That's from Barbara Stanton. And then we have Dan Allison.
Go ahead, Van.
Good evening. This is Dan Allison, and I'm speaking for Sacramento Transit Advocates and Riders. We strenuously object to the recommendation as it was presented. There's no reason to make alternates or even regular board members be elected officials. The law doesn't require it, and that's a restriction that doesn't exist at the moment. So we see no reason for that. The maximum size of 13, what's the reason for that? It's just tying the board's hands behind their back because the next time some entity gets added, it'll have to go through the whole thing again. The ad hoc committee was not really announced to the public. It was only discovered by somebody looking at the website. So there was no public engagement on this. It's a major change to SAC-RT's board, no public engagement. And if it passes as it was written, we will not just object to SAC-RT, but we will object to Assemblyman Cooley and suggest that he not sponsor such legislation. We need public engagement if we're making major changes to board structure. However, we do support the addition of a seat for the county and Elk Grove. It is certainly fair to both of those entities to add a seat for each of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan. Next comment.
Okay, Jeffrey Tartagia.
Good evening, board. And I'm going to take. Hello.
We had you there and then we lost you. You're back.
Yeah, it went muted again. But Jeff Tartagia, advocate, dealing with the SAC-TRU body as well as several other coalitions. And I'm going to speak from the aspect of trust. Trust is a nationwide riders advocate. And unfortunately, RT is the only one that has elected individuals only. So I do indeed suggest that you increase it. And like Dan, I know Kevin Cooley, and yes, presently, I think you didn't do the public input that you needed to do. And this is something you knew about in hand much earlier than this. Just like right now of going on YouTube to try and see what the information is, you're going to have to put a recording on there of this conversation. And with that, I will end this in supporting that you bring more individuals in, because like the board does not know so many things, which my public comment not on the agenda will be addressed somewhat later. But this is you have the time and you could have done it, and you should have set out more public input because it is a structural change. It should be that each of the elected members want to be here because RT's business is important. Maybe you need earlier notice so that people can do and make the accommodations that you are talking about and proposing. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Tartagia. All right, is there any more public comment, Tabitha?
There's no more public comment.
And I'll ask, I've got Director Chenier and then followed by Director Srtp.
I'll defer to Director Srtp first.
Okay, thank you, Jay. So I'd like to move that we go ahead with the ad hoc committee's recommendation with the following changes. That the city and county of Sacramento be permitted to appoint non-elected individuals as alternates, unless there's agreement by the board here to make it that way for, I guess it would be Elk Grove as well. So that would be the first part, responding to Jay's suggestion and Katie's and Linda's, which I agree with. And then specific to the county as part of the motion, it would be to have each of the 4 members of the board of supervisors who sit as directors on the RT governing board, leave it to each of those members to appoint their alternates. That again would not be restricted just to elected individuals, but it could be others with particular expertise or interests, transit. So that would be my motion. I'd ask for a second.
So I'm happy to second. If I could offer maybe a slight twist on it to get to the same result, which would be that each jurisdiction can appoint the number of alternates as they have seats, which would take care of both the county and the city.
Yeah.
And Elk Grove, and that none have to be elected officials.
That's fine. That's good. Good.
Thank you.
Clean.
Okay, so motion with a second. I do, before I call the roll, I do have Director Hume's hand up. Anybody else would wish to speak? Get your hand up, please.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, let me just start by saying I appreciate the consensus to add the seat for Elk Grove. It doesn't go unnoticed. I'm just curious from the motioner and the seconder if there's a potential. I don't even know the word I want to say, but by having too many alternates, that they're not up to speed on the kind of recurring issues that come before RT. If there might be a compromise to be made where there could be multiple alternates, but some are shared, because I think the likelihood of all 4 voting members being absent the same night is probably pretty low.
And
I guess I'm just trying to forestall a situation where there's a learning curve that continues to happen by new alternates cycling in.
If to the chair, Mr. Miller. So my experience with, again, the library authority, and I tend to use alternates for the library authority and for the local air district with some frequency because of my built-in scheduling conflict with California Air Resources Board. So in those instances, my experience has been that there's been no problem keeping alternates up to speed because they're getting materials, they're getting agenda notices, they're getting the calendar well in advance. I think it's actually important for us to have the same number of alternates as members. You never know with something like, I don't know, cap to cap or, some NACO conference, CSAC conference, league conference. You may actually have, you may come up against a situation where you do have all members for whatever reason that may not be there.
Thank you, Director Srtp. Director Budge, you have your hand up?
So unfortunately, I can see both sides of this. The curious thing is, years ago, and I mean seriously, like 16 years ago, Isla Collin asked me to be her alternate on the Library Authority Board. And I thought, based on the basic definition of alternate, I would go when she wasn't able. Well, that wasn't the intent. Phil, as you say, she wanted me to be her representative on the Library Authority Board, period. And so that's how I started going to the Library Board. But I will say, the need to keep people up to speed truly depends on what's going on at any given point in time. When my alternate comes to regional transit, there's not, there is a need for learning curve. But if I attend SACOG, there's not a need for learning curve. So, you know, it really depends on an adequate selection of an alternate who is kind of following along what's happening. So what's being proposed could definitely work. I understand Patrick's concern, but what's being proposed could definitely work.
Okay, any other director comments?
Chair, one last comment. I just want to make clear, especially for, I suppose it would be Olga who would make sure the language ultimately is the way we want it to be. I want to make sure that we scratch the reference to the 5th supervisor being the alternate. So this, what I've suggested as it relates to the Board of Supervisors, replaces that.
Makes sense.
I just have a question, if I could.
Yes, please.
Do we need to be specific about process within each jurisdiction to pick alternates, or is that up to the, we're just going to leave that, I assume, to the jurisdiction? Which would be my preference.
Yeah, that's my.
That's what I envisioned with the direction that you guys are going. And it
Just
would
wanted to be
need,
clear.
I'm assuming it would also need a resolution from the jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any further comments?
And just to correct one of the speakers, I think, at least for the city, when we're picking, boards and commissions are different than JPAs. We choose our own alternates, like for the Library Commission or SACOG. That's not done through our personnel committees or advertising. So I assume this would happen the same way.
Okay. Well, not seeing any other hands up. Speak now. All right. Would you please call the roll, Tabitha?
Okay, can you, Director Srtp, can you repeat the motion?
Afraid you'd say that. So the motion is to have any member jurisdiction that has that would have alternates. The members, those jurisdictions would pick alternates for their seated representation on the RT board. They do not have to have, and it would be commensurate with the number that is appropriated for service on this board. And the selection of those alternates is not restricted to elected individuals. It would be at the discretion of the individual jurisdictions and its membership to select them.
But you did start off by moving the basic recommendation with those changes.
Correct.
Okay.
And then that last piece about making sure that the 5th member of the Board of Supervisors, what I've suggested is reflects changes for Sacramento County. That 5th member would no longer be considered. I guess they could be, but it not explicitly.
Director Srtp, this is Olga. Are you fine with the 13-member limit?
Yeah, this doesn't change that, does it?
Okay, it shouldn't, but I just want to confirm that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and Chenier is the second.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris, Director Howe,
No.
Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Yes.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Srtp,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela,
Yes.
and Chair Miller.
No.
Item 4.1 passes with 8 votes.
Thank you. And I did want to also ditto the comments, thanking our ad hoc committee. We took a little extra time out of our days to work on this. And I want to thank staff for the presentations and really good deliberations tonight. So thank you. With that, next item, please.
Next item under unfinished business is item 4.2, resolution 22-02-0006, delegating authority to the general manager, CEO to negotiate and execute a lease with the city of Sacramento for use by city of the Franklin Light Rail Station as a safe parking site. And Chris Flores is here to present this item.
Good evening, Mr. Flores.
Good evening, Chair Miller. Thank you, Tabitha. And at the last board meeting, staff presented an update on the progress being made to launch a safe parking program at the Roseville Road Light Rail Station. Because of the approval process timeline, the board instructed staff to also move forward with launching a safe parking program at the Franklin Light Rail Station. Tonight, we are asking the board to delegate the authority to the general manager to move forward with a safe parking program at the Franklin Station. Next slide. After the January board meeting, Sacramento staff reached out to the city to coordinate details. In December, new Sacramento City Council districts took effect, and the station has moved from Councilman Jennings' district to Councilwoman Mai Vane's district. The city is currently coordinating with Councilwoman's office and will be sending additional details to SacRT. Last fall, the city provided SacRT with a potential site map for the Franklin Light Rail parking program. As you can see on this slide, it is proposed for the southwest corner of the parking lot with a footprint of 92 parking spaces. Next slide. The Franklin Light Rail Station, which opened in 2015, has a total of 664 parking spots. As you can see on this chart, in October 2019, just prior to the pandemic, the station utilization was approximately 450 cars per day, or about 2/3 full. It is a popular park and ride and was growing in use. Next slide. This slide shows a larger aerial view of the Franklin Station. The city proposed boundaries from the last fall are identified in blue at the bottom left of the screen. The red area represents SacRT staff's draft proposal based on the board's comment last meeting, requesting staff look at an expanded footprint. This site in red covers 148 parking spaces, representing more than a 50% increase from the city rendering last fall. The shaded area on the map represents what 450 parking spots would be pre-pandemic peak use. This amounts to what SacRT needs to preserve for the riders. And then the final slide. Should the board approve the item tonight, there are a few outstanding items that will need to be performed prior to the launch. Community outreach will be an integral part of the process moving forward. The city will agree to a good neighbor policy with the surrounding community. The city will establish a public safety priority zone that prohibits camping and storing personal property within the designated boundary. The city and SacRT will agree to a lease agreement, site plan, and program guidelines for the operations. And once plans are finalized, SacRT will seek FTA concurrence for a 1-year pilot. With that, we are happy to entertain any questions and feedback.
Thank you, Chris. Director Hume.
Thank you, sir. Christopher, I guess you don't have to go back to the screen sharing, but on the map overlay, there was a drive aisle, and then there was a little kind of annex section closer to the station, but then all of the parking lots that were, or spaces that were along another drive aisle. Okay, so if we look at this, if you look at where the north arrow is, and you have that strip of parking, single spaces along that edge closest to the north part of the boundary and kind of the tip of that point, would it be possible to swap out the area that, for lack of a better term, bleeds into the rest of the parking field for that area so that the whole space is contained within that one contiguous triangle?
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's a storage unit, if you see at the very bottom left corner, that needs access, has some critical equipment, as well as a switch up at the northern side. So we proposed this one, which would still be fenced completely in and be contiguous, and there would no longer be that the entrance in and out right there, because there's already one that's closer to the platform to the east if you look off of Consumnes Boulevard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess that's really what caught my eye is the loss of that secondary ingress and egress. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hume. I have Director Jennings. You had your hand up. You okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. As mentioned by Chris, as he made the presentation, this left my district and it now is in Councilmember My Vang's district, but I still remain fully committed to the safe parking lot. We took a model that we saw in San Jose and in Southern California, and we think we have the best of all worlds as far as being able to help people who sleep in their car, and that's the only form of housing that they have. We have the best model of being able to help them move into housing, move into employment, and be able to make sure that their kids get into school. And I think this is a perfect parking lot. We've done the community outreach and have been diligent in doing community outreach. And it looks like even after we vote on this tonight, we'll still continue to do more. And I really appreciate the good neighbor policy to make sure that everybody feels good about it being there. But so far in the south area of Sacramento, there are no significant safe parking lots for people to be able to utilize a parking lot in a safe place. So they're sleeping on the streets at the danger of everyone who passes them. So I just, I asked my colleagues to really consider moving this forward, giving the general manager the ability to negotiate a contract to move this forward for the 1-year pilot. And then we can take a look and see whether or not we go further after that. So I just want to appeal on behalf of my colleague, Mai Vang, and the work that we've done over the last 2 years in trying to make this happen.
Thank you, Rick. And next I have Director Srtp, followed by our Vice Chair, Mr. Kennedy.
I think Vice Chair Kennedy was in the queue before I was Chair.
They're jumping around on my screen. I try and take them in order. What can I say?
I'll defer to Patrick. I'll go after Patrick.
All righty.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Jennings, for your leadership on this that, I've been on the periphery of, but following very closely as this is also in my district. Matter of fact, it's only in my district now as far as our T board members go. I fully support it. One thing that I would like, based upon the presentation that was given, is I would like to be in direct consultation, not just have City of Sacramento representatives, but also I would like to personally be in direct consultation as it moves forward, as I'm the only RT board member that currently represents that particular spot.
No objection here. Director Srtp.
Thank you. So I applaud the work that's gone into this siting effort thus far. I plan to support tonight's recommendation. And thanks to Chris and Supervisor Kennedy and Jennings, City Council Member Jennings, and others that have helped lead this along. I think it's important as we all look for creative ways to add necessary capacity. I do want to, though, stress that as was presented, this is intended to be a 12-month long pilot, which I can appreciate because I think we all have a hunger to, see what works, see how we can pivot if necessary during a certain amount of time, and then build the trust that will be necessary to make this, an effort that could last longer than a year. Just speaking from recent experience, there's been a lot of mystery around some other well-intentioned efforts to cite other aspects of capacity building near the unincorporated county, but within the city of Sacramento. Only mysterious in that it's been confusing to me and one of my colleagues until recently whether something was being proposed as a pilot, and if so, for how long? How is it memorialized as a pilot? When there's a review of what worked and what didn't, or how to adjust things, that was unclear. So I would simply ask that we, since this is an RT asset, we on the board be kept apprised and have it made very clear how we have that collective understanding about those parameters for the site, especially those relating to its status as a pilot. I think it's important for us to understand that so we can avoid any assumptions later or guessing later after the fact, or different opinions about what we think may have happened when we were at a decision point. And I think that's critical. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Valenzuela.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody, for the comments here. I'm really supportive of this project. I don't need to sell any of you on that, but I had the opportunity to check in with my colleague, Councilmember Vang. I know she's planning a community meeting on March 3rd. She's been super open about all of the details, and I'm sure would welcome anybody's participation in that so we can make sure this works out the best for everybody. So I'll definitely be supporting tonight, and I know none of us would turn away any partnership or any feedback in implementing this or other sites. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other direct questions, comments? What's the term of the lease, or have we left that open?
So it's a 1-year pilot with options for extend, but we welcome feedback on that. Yeah, it would go back to the board.
Let's at this time go to public comment, please, if we have any.
We have Jeff Tartagia has his hand up.
Go ahead, Mr. Tartagia.
Yes, this is Jeff Tartagia, and I'm going to wear a different hat right now as dealing with Sacramento Steps Forward, and because I am your co-chair on your PIT committee right now, that in 2 weeks or less, we'll be doing a survey of our homeless individuals. To me, I will offer to you is every one of these projects have ended up being delayed. You need 18 months because if you're going to have a 6-month period to get people transitioned through, and I will also offer back from Santa Monica 20 some odd years ago, plus is you need to have not 311, but a telephone number that makes the direct connection for safe parking. So you have the direct connection about what's going on there. I know that, our safety officer is going to be managing, but she's got other duties and responsibilities as well. And trying, just like I can offer, there's at least 5 other bus stops where we have homeless people have taken over the bus stop. This is a good thing and it needs to be expanded, but at the same time, getting all the vehicles on Roseville Road that are RVs and getting so many others placed and parked in there, a security officer and the other parameters, but you need to have it at least 18 months. And you're seeing this right now with the XY facility that's supposed to close down at the end of this year. It's just only so few people are getting addressed and dealt with. And that's my public comment to you regarding the homeless and regarding the counts and regarding the fact of making safe ground work.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Any other public comment?
We have Nick Bryant.
Yes, another thing I like to talk about is that says regarding this homeless issue, we need to get police patrols involved at Lewis and Orlando. Get rid of the homeless guys at Lewis and Orlando. Get rid of this homeless guy that's sleeping at our bench at Lewis and Orlando, that he's taking up our bus bench, and people have to wait for the bus, and he does not take the bus, and we need to do something about this. We need to put him somewhere, like into a shelter or something needs to happen. We need to step up police patrols. Even RT police needs to do something about it. Get rid of him and not have him loitering at our bus bench anymore. This is ridiculous that nobody wants to sit at our bus bench anymore because they don't want to wait for the bus right there anymore, because he's taking up the whole bench and he wants to sleep all night and hangs out there all day. And today I seen him at Orlando. He was not wearing any shoes, and this is part of part of the issue. We need to get rid of this guy. He is a nuisance and it's a problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your comments. Any other director questions or comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Jennings. Was that Vice Chair Kennedy
Yes.
for the second?
Yes, sir.
Tabitha, please call the roll.
Director Budge,
Yes.
Director Harris, Director Howell, Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Yes.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
Director Valenzuela.
Yes.
I'm going to go back to Director Howell.
She fell off the bridge.
Okay. And
Fell or
And I
was
won't-
pushed?
and I won't forget Chair Miller this time. Chair Miller.
Aye.
All right. Item 4.2 passes with 9 votes.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm leaving. Mr. Chair, I'm leaving.
All right, take care, drive safe.
Thank you.
Happy Valentine's.
You too.
With that, we're ready for the next item.
The next item is number 6, public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Do we have any comments?
I have an email comment from Jeffrey Tartagia. Because management leaves at 5 p.m., the last 2 complete bus trips needs to get people home or destination. Next day review of what got canceled the previous day. Also, how many trips canceled each week. The website needs to highlight when and where trips are canceled.
All right, any other hands up?
I don't see any hands up.
All right, well, thank you for those comments, Jeffrey. With that, we'll move on to the next item.
Okay, next we have new business, item 7.1, resolution 22-02-0004, repeal and amend resolution number 09-02-0026, recognizing Rosa Parks. And for the record, a correction was made on the resolution to the spelling of modern that was reflected as modem.
Oh. Glad you
And
caught
Deborah,
that.
and Deborah Salinas is here to present this item.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Miller, Sacramento Board, and the public. I'm Deborah Salinas, VP of Communications and Partnerships. Tonight, I am presenting the amended Rosa Parks Day resolution that has been brought to you for adoption. As some of you may recall, on February 23rd, 2009, the board adopted resolution 09-02-0026, recognizing and honoring Rosa Parks on the first Monday following her birthday, February 4th each year. The amended resolution will instead recognize Rosa Parks on her actual birthday on February 4th. In addition, this year, Sacramento celebrated with the community, honoring her courageous achievements by displaying our historic 1958 bus, Old Blue, that you see on the screen at the Capitol, where the public was encouraged to stop by and learn more about the critical role Rosa Parks played in the civil rights movement. Since it all started on a bus, we were also honored her legacy by offering free rides on all fixed route buses on February 4th with a free ride flyer, and placed a special sign on each seat at the front of every bus, which provided a brief description about Rosa Parks with her image. Adopting this amended resolution continues Sacramento's longstanding support for transit equity. Thank you. That concludes my summary.
Thank you. And I wasn't going to ask you to read the whole proclamation, but it is in our agenda package and goes into more detail about what was just presented. So thank you, Deborah. And this is an action item. Is there any director questions or comments?
Chenier will move the item.
Hume, second.
Motion by Director Chenier and seconded by Director Hume. Any public comment before I call for the vote?
It looks like Jeffrey Tartagia has his hand up.
All right, Jeffrey.
My public comment is that the trust element, so across the country, we acknowledge this being a transportation day and February support, and we did that across the country. Various transit riders supported across the country that this was an important transit event. It's just a comment.
Oh, fantastic comment. Thank you, Mr. Tartagia. With that, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, Director Budge, Director Harris, Director Howell, Director Hume,
Aye.
Director Jennings,
Yes.
Director Kennedy,
Aye.
Director Natoli,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Cerna,
Aye.
and Director Valenzuela.
Yes.
And motion passes with 8 votes.
Make it 9.
Oh, gosh, I did it again. Director Chair Miller.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. The motion carries. Next item, please.
The next item under new business is item 7.2, information item, short range transit plan, SAC-RT on the move. And Laura Ham is here to present this item.
Thank you, Tabitha.
Good evening, Chair Miller, directors, and members of the public. I'd like to introduce we have a presentation coming up here, but I'll go ahead and get started while that comes up. I would like to introduce our short range transit plan presentation tonight. A short range transit plan is required as a condition of receiving federal funding, and its purpose is to plan out our operations for the next 5 years. It is a cost-constrained plan, and it considers stable as well as potential funding sources for the 5-year period covered by the plan. It does assume the passage of a 25-cent sales tax, partially dedicated to transit within the plan timeframe, as does the current Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Our plan, named SAC-RT on the Move, as you can see here on the screen, includes an overview of the current transit system and a plan to move the agency forward. It builds upon the SAC-RT Forward network redesign, but also considers the impacts of the pandemic upon travel patterns in the region, future growth, and equity. We will also update you tonight on the impacts to our service related to the current nationwide labor shortages and how this has influenced the services that we provide to the community. Our goal tonight is to introduce the plan for a 30-day public comment as documented in our staff report. We have already conducted initial public outreach to seek input on the draft plan, including with our regional partners at SAC-RT public meetings, which have been virtual to date, and outreach to SAC-RT's Mobility Advisory Council. We're appreciative of any initial feedback from the board tonight and throughout the process before we adopt the plan in the spring. I want to say a thank you to the planning and operations team that's been closely monitoring service and resources and continuously planning to meet our current and future needs. I'd like to introduce James Boyle, SAC-RT's Director of Planning, to give you an overview of the SRTP. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I hope everyone can hear me okay. As Laura stated, tonight we're here to really talk about our short-range transit plan, but also I quickly want to update you on some proposed service changes coming up for April. So next slide, please. Adam, thank you. So quickly, we are going to be implementing some minor service adjustments underneath the adopted SAC-RT policy. And these service changes would take place on April 3rd. And they would only impact a few select trips on select fixed routes and some commuter services. We're looking at approximately about a 3% service change overall. We have been continuously monitoring and following the situation in terms of our cancellations. And I think you heard Jeffrey Tartagia actually mention that earlier. So we've been working very closely with our operations staff and scheduling, and we believe we've come up with a really good list to kind of get ahead of the cancellations so that our riders are able to have a more consistent schedule and a more reliable network. And the changes that we're proposing would only be temporary and in place no longer than 12 months. And as always, we would make sure that we outreach to all of the riders who would be impacted on routes or trips that might be impacted. And we'll work closely with our marketing team on making sure that the riders know what other options they have. And our hope is that through our steadfast efforts to recruit and retain frontline staff and addressing the impacts of the pandemic and continuously try to adjust to meet our customers' needs, that will allow us to restructure, restore, and also grow our public transit service that our community so desperately needs. Next slide, Adam. Quickly, I just wanted to show you a few metrics, kind of give you an idea of like some of the data we use to make these decisions. This particular one just highlights our commuter trips. And really what I want you to see here is the percent of pre-COVID ridership. We are down pretty tremendously on all of our commuter routes. You can see some of them are 15, 70% of previous pre-COVID ridership. Next slide. And then a quick comparison of the all-day fixed route service, which you see here in the green line, as compared to the commuter trips, which you see in the red line. And the blue line represents our student ridership. So this shows a trend going back to September 1st of 2019, when we first implemented Sacramento Forward, the drop off with COVID. And you can see that our commuter trips have not really rebounded hardly at all. And our student riders are really carrying the system right now. And we're so happy for Student Ride Free and the impact they're having on our service. Next slide. And I wanted to also take the opportunity just to compare some of our commuter routes to some of our all-day fixed route service that has been performing very well in terms of ridership and very consistent. So the top three lines are some of our best all-day fixed route. You can see the ridership has been steady. At the bottom two there are some of our commuter trips. Next slide. So with that, I would like to transition to talk about our SRTP. And Laura did a great job introducing it, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But this is a 5-year planning document, and it will carry us through the rest of 2022 and into 2027. And we hope to have our new plan to SACOG adopted by our board by June of this year. Next slide. So Laura covered quite a bit of this, but obviously there's a lot of things that we've been paying attention to over the past couple of years, a lot of big changes at SAC-RT and in our community. And SAC-RT Forward being one of those, and COVID-19 obviously having major impacts as well. We've done a tremendous amount of coordination with our partners. We've, are very aware of the efforts with the city of Sacramento and their climate action plan, but also the regional goals with SACOG and reducing GHGs and VMT. And we're hopeful that with our short range transit plan, looking at the next 5 years, that what we're putting forward will help to drive people or get people on transit and help meet some of those regional goals. Next slide. So again, we look at SAC-RT Forward and we look at what we think went right, what could we have done better? I mean, that plays a role in the development of our plan. Obviously, COVID-19 has played a tremendous impact on our ridership, as you saw earlier with some of those slides comparing our commuter routes to all-day fixed route. And even though we've been through COVID, the community, the region is still growing. So we're still meeting the needs of new growth and new development, and equity will play always a big role in the future of our planning and the future of our service. Next slide. So again, other considerations we've taken into for development of our plan, always customer comments, customer complaints, customer feedback are number one to us. And then unmet transit needs and ridership building initiatives are also important to us as well. Next slide. So the next couple of slides really highlight what we're proposing in our service and our 5-year service plan. And I'm not going to go through everything line by item, but I wanted to give you sort of a taste of what we're looking at. And we had a public meeting last Thursday where we highlighted or daylighted some of our plans here. And so, the next 2-3 years, we're looking at, a lot of frequency improvements. And again, I'd like to reiterate that, in the building of our SAC-RT Forward network, we created network that we could build frequency into. So what you're going to see here is really the additions of those frequencies and the spans of service will be increased as well. Next slide. Again, this goes into the mid years of our plan and the later years of our plan, but for instance, the Delta Shores, the development out there, the opening of our Morrison Creek Light Rail Station, the new development that's going to come in around that station lends itself for us to propose a new route. And so these are just some of the ideas that we've presented in our short range transit plan. And we also have Elk Grove and Folsom. So we're making sure that we're reaching out and including all of our service areas. Next slide. So as we move forward and we kind of think about the future, one of the things that we worked on, and especially in light of the city and the work they're doing with their climate action plan, and to think about the future and like, what do we want our system to look like for the future? This gives you a representation of if we were to, get a new sales tax measure, a new funding source, a new revenue stream, to help us imagine what a system could look like if we wanted to really ramp up our system. So if you imagine that we get a new sales tax measure and we get about $80 million a year more coming into SAC-RT, what you see on your screen here, the red lines are basically 15-minute bus routes where we would be implementing all-day 15-minute route service. And the orange lines you can see here represent light rail or bus rapid transit projects. So, this kind of gives us a vision and a path forward to think about the future with any sales tax measure. And that will help us take advantage of all the new federal funding that's coming down, the new state funding as well. So the hope is that, as we build our 5-year plan, we build towards that network that we want to have in the future, where we're really helping our region reduce GHGs and VMTs. This really is the goal, the end goal. Next slide. So next steps for us include tonight, after the board will release our document for official public review. That'll be a 30-day public review comment period. And then in March, we will conclude our public comment period. We will analyze and look at all the comments we received, and we will make adjustments to our plan as necessary. And then the hope is that we'll come back in April for a final presentation on our Srtp to have the board adopt it, and then we would forward it on to SACOG. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer questions or take comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. First, I have Vice Chair Kennedy, followed by Director Serna.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. First of all, I wasn't going to talk about climate action plan, but James, you brought it up. And, reading the county's latest version of the climate action plan, one of my first comments to staff at the county was, because you brought up working with the city on their climate action plan, was that I felt like RT, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but you brought it up. Our RT was getting just barely mentioned in our climate action plan. And the reason-based staff was that, well, they have their own board and they determine their own routes. But I don't buy that. So I hope that RT will, and I have asked our staff to do the same thing, be more forward in infusing your planning into our climate action plan, into the county's climate action plan. And now's the time. So if you haven't talked to Todd Smith, please do. Our climate action plan is woefully weak on regional transit. That was not why I wanted to speak. What I really wanted to say was, during the planning of the looking at our routes after 30 years of not having done so, I happened to be chair at the time when we were going through this process, and James and Henry and I, took the show on the road in many areas. And one of the things that I said continuously was that we're not going to spend another 30 years before we do this again. This is going to be something that's going to be alive. It's going to be a living document. It's going to be something we keep working on. And so I just want to, commend staff for not making me a liar, but for actually being true to the community. And that's that we're going to find out where we made mistakes. We're going to find out where we got it right, and we're going to continue to tweak this thing. It will constantly be evolving. So thank you, James. Thank you, Henry, and staff for continuing this evolving process. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick. Director Serna?
Thank you, Chair. First, I concur wholeheartedly with my colleague, Supervisor Kennedy, on the robust invitation for RT staff and our consultants to work closely with our planners at Sac County on our climate action plan. I think those comments were well put and deservedly so. And we want to make sure that all of our sister agencies that have something to do, anything to do with how the cities and county can best prepare to hopefully ameliorate the effects of climate change, do our part. That is, they should be working with you. We should be working with one another. So that was a great comment by Director Kennedy. I wanted to ask a question of James about the timing. You had one chart that had that showed the years and what changes to different routes might look like in those years. And you had, you said I think it showed a route to the airport in 2027. And I was wondering, why that long? Why would we wait that long? First of all, we already have some service, don't we?
We do. So currently we do have the 142.
Right.
So Director Serna, what we did is, I mean, obviously we have so many plans and projects and improvements to all the routes we'd love to do. We kind of really took what we've been hearing from the public and what we've heard over the past couple of years and what's important to people. And so we've looked at, trying to list out the projects or the improvements that we would like to do over the next 5 years. The way we have them listed now doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way it has to be. And we just kind of laid them out that way as sort of, let's get the conversation going and let's look at the ones that we have in the first couple of years as a little bit higher priority because, we've been hearing a lot about these, in terms of some of the routes, the frequency improvements, the spans of service. And then obviously as Air Metro Park continues to build out, North Natomas continues to build out, we've been working closely with the county actually on a lot of projects up there. And I think I actually have a meeting coming up this week or next week with the county to specifically talk about Air Metro Park and the possibilities of new bus service going through Air Metro Park with the extension of Elkhorn Boulevard and that project ramping up. So Director Serna, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to really kind of fine tune what we want to do with the airport in terms of our fixed route service. And, there's a possibility that if we want to move up something sooner in our timeline, we could possibly do that.
No, I appreciate that. It seems to me that we probably I assume we've been collecting data on the 142 since its inception and deployment. And with, the region coming out of the pandemic, just like the rest of the world, I suspect that activity at the airport is going to creep up closer to normal at some point. And even before the pandemic, you're probably aware that our airport system was estimating the number of enplanements as being pretty healthy in the future, not the distant future, but the near future. And so I think taking data from what we're learning with 142 and certainly working closely with our airport system, I would hope that we would certainly not let that initial target year of 2027 dissuade us from pivoting if necessary to provide service when we think it makes sense, even if before 2027 to the airport. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, James. This is an informational item only. Do we have public comment?
We do. I have one email public comment, and it looks like Jeff Tartagia and Nick Bryant have their hands up.
Okay, let's take those, please.
Okay. Jeff?
Yes, this is Jeff. How did you resolve, and what is the 15 going to look like now because of what's going on in Richards Boulevard? And because it seems unlikely that you're going to get the light rail station built out there, and the 33 only runs Monday through Friday, I'm concerned about that deadline with all of the construction that's going on in that area. Did you address that by returning the 15 to downtown? That's part of the other thing I will alert you that you should already know is both the 88 and the 86 do not leave from 9th and K, and they do not leave from 11th Street. They have been moved around. Their schedules need to be updated for the public. And I spoke earlier about that some policies needed to be in there because after 5 o'clock was recommending that some bus cancellation policies be in effect. And I will also that you probably all well are aware and know that all the Omicron has, in a sense, decreased. There are 2 more variants that are supposed to be more than 30% more contagious. So we're still not out of the fact that we need to protect ourselves. And that means we need to find the way to increase ridership to when they feel comfortable in doing it. I've ridden the buses, and often I will be the only one on a bus route to less than 5 people do I get to see on any route other than the 51. And I'll stop.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Could you briefly address his comments, Mr. Boyle?
Actually, I think, Mr. Chairman, we made note on all those questions, and we.
Oh, very good. Very good. It will take it into the public comment period for the next 30 days.
Good.
Next speaker, please.
Nick?
Nick, you're on.
Yeah, how you doing today? So my other question is, I know this is going to affect us, these cancellations and trips. I want to know what the 25 is going to look like and why it's being canceled, because every time I go to Orlando on the Wednesday, say like if I go to my bowling, I'm seeing the 11, 10, 27, 10, 37. I'm guessing they canceled that route trip and I have to wait for the next one, and that's an issue. And even that, when I have to take the Plaza County Transit to Water 80, I look at the schedule, and even on one side and both sides, but the one schedule on Water 80 on the 84 side, you can't even see it because it's got graffiti inside that on the schedule, and even it needs to be updated. And when I go inside to the new elevator to go downstairs, and there's graffiti inside the new elevator. It's already damaged. Vandalism. And also, I don't want to have to wait for the 25 for a long time. What if it gets canceled? And what if it's going to affect our routes? I have to get to the one place to another. I would like to get an email on what buses are being canceled, because I would like to know. And I would like an email on what, again, I want an email what buses are being canceled and what trips. So I know.
Right. Thank you, Nick. Is there other public comment, Tabitha?
I just have the one email public comment.
Okay.
It's from, and it's really long, so I'm going to read about the first 250 words. It's from Angela Herring, SAC-RT Board of Directors. My public comment is in regards to the lack of transportation options, especially on the weekends, undependable transit with the current Smart Ride as an on-demand service, and the fact that the nearest bus stop is a mile away in North Natomas, and the response to unmet net needs that are listed in item 7.2 beginning at page 81. The completion of the first phase of the Sacramento Transportation Priority Plan displays that there is a need for transportation options in North Natomas, which is reflected in the graphic on page 5 of the report. This past year, my son, who is a transportation advocate, participated in the City of Sacramento Transportation Priority Plan informational video to encourage Sacramento residents to participate in the online survey for phase 1. My son is featured in the video twice, the first time at 2:20 and the second time at 4:04. Current transportation disadvantages in North Natomas are SAC-RT, the nearest SAC-RT bus line, number 13, is located on El Centro in Del Paso, which is a 35-minute walk. The bus line number 11 on Truxell and Arena is also a 45-minute walk. The bus line number 86, located on San Juan Road in Azevedo, is a 40-minute walk. Transportation options are limited and few west of I-5. Currently, there is no constant and reliable public transportation. The nearest SAC-RT bus line, number 13, is located on El Centro in Del Paso, which is a 35-minute walk. The bus line number 11 on Truxell and Arena is also a 45-minute walk, and the bus line on number 86, located on San Juan Road in Azevedo, is a 40-minute walk. And I did, all the board members were CC'd on that comment that just came in right before the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go ahead and include that in the public outreach comments. So
okay,
those will get it looked at in detail. Any other questions or comments from board members? Any other public comment? If not, we'll move on.
Okay, the next item is 8.1, the general manager's report.
Good evening, Chair, board directors, and the public. Let me begin by wishing everyone a happy Valentine's Day. I will try to be brief for those of us who have plans for tonight. Certainly, first, I would like to provide a brief COVID update. And multiple public comments indicate that the recent surge of Omicron variant had an impact on SAC-RT's operations, and which resulted in an increase in trip cancellations and service delays recently, especially in early January and later December. And we never like to see any cancellations, so we continue to aggressively recruit for additional staff, while we actually have been maintaining a nearly full service level during this difficult time, when our peers in the industry have been reduced their service significantly, across the country. We did not. We want to maintain a nearly full service level like prior pandemic. So if we reduced our service by, let's say, 10%, then our passengers probably would not say any cancellations. So it's a balance we try to strike. In the meantime, the good news is we have been diligently implementing very innovative and best industry hiring practices to recruit new employees, which has helped and will further help to address the staffing shortage issue. And by March 1st, our operational team, the bus operational team, will have about 6% of additional bus drivers on board. That will definitely reduce any cancellations or service delays to the minimum. We actually, last 2 weeks, we actually saw some significant drops in the cancellations. And if we get that additional drivers, new drivers, we will, our customers will see significant improvement. And that is why we only try to adjust our service level when James talked about the short term, the first year or next, one cutting period. We only reduced our service at less than 3%, primarily for the commuter trips, because the commuter trips carry very little, very small number of passengers, primarily for the state workers, because they work remotely. But our staff, like I said, have worked extremely hard, and to acknowledge our outstanding workforce, who have truly been heroes, moving heroes in this pandemic. We will be, after working with our union leaders and look at our peer agencies across the country, we will issue a one-time hazard payment for all Sacrates employees, except executive team members. So all VPs and our general counsel, myself, will be exempted for this one-time hazard payment. And the payment will be $1,500. Our employees will be able to get that in March 10th paycheck. And we hope this added measure will help keep our tenant workforce, customers, and the community safer and healthier. We did this because we look at our year-to-date financials. Looks like we're going to have like a $3 million surplus this year, this fiscal year. So that's why we can make this $1,500 payment, which probably close to 1.2 or $3 million cost. So then skip to the next slide about the WTS. After we helped SMART received a grant of $10,000 award from APTA a month ago. Last month, the Women in Transportation Sacramento chapter announced the 2021 annual award winners. Sacramento will be receiving the Innovative Transportation Solutions Award at the upcoming WTS Scholarship event on March 24th. WTS is honoring Sacramento's groundbreaking social service practitioner program. As you all know, Sacramento is the committed community partner that believes we have a social responsibility to provide safe, clean, and convenient public transit to all members of our community. With the homelessness on the rise, we are proud of our in-house social service practitioner program. The program connects individuals living along Sacramento's right-of-way and transit facilities with regional social services agencies or organizations. And congratulations to our team on this groundbreaking program for getting an award. On to the next topic. At the end of January last month, Vice Chair Kennedy and Sacramento were delighted to host Congresswoman Doris Matsui at the Siemens Mobility Facility in the South Sacramento, where we celebrate a milestone in our light rail modernization. Siemens is currently in the production for 28 new low-floor light rail cars. These much-needed new vehicles support hundreds of high-skilled manufacturing jobs here in Sacramento, which is Vice Chair Kennedy's district he represents, and keeping the local economy moving. As a reminder, our contract with Siemens allows for the purchase of up to 72 new vehicles. And I want to thank Congresswoman Matsui for her support of the federal bipartisan infrastructure law that will not only help us transition our fleet, but also complete our light rail modernization program. Because, for example, at the peak time, if we do not extend our light rail lines, our peak time, requirement for the vehicle it's about like 60 something. Then if we will have 72 new vehicles, then we will have enough backup vehicles. So 72 vehicles will be able to allow us to run a full service with 10-20% of backup. right now we have 97 vehicles, but some of those vehicles need frequent repairs, and also we in the peak time we have just 4-car concept. But in the future, because our new cars will be bigger and more spacious, our concept will be just 3 cars. So that will allow us to reduce our total number of new cars. Speaking of the light rail modernization, just a little bit, last information. At our last board meeting, there were some questions regarding the project summaries and timeline. And here, you can see from the screen, the project program calls for 72 new vehicles, and also as part of the upgrade, light rail stations will require platform modifications and other upgrades to allow for level boarding with the new low fleet. And a side track will be constructed in the city of Folsom to provide 15 minutes headways on the last 5 miles of the Gold Line between the cities of Rancho Cordova and Folsom. And the project will definitely provide improved reliability and better accessibility for all passengers, especially our disabled passengers, while reducing traffic congestions on the busy Highway 50 corridor. And you can see the chart on this slide shows our construction schedule and various cost estimates for the project, and we have full funding with this. Lastly, before I conclude my remarks, and I would like to remind the public that Srtp is currently conducting an online rider survey to get feedback around riders' experience and willingness to take public transit to help us plan for future system priorities. Right now, in front of industry, 3 major issues are: first, what are we going to do with the future because of the travel pattern change? Second, the financial cliff or financial uncertainty for lots of, especially the large transit agencies. They are facing severe financial difficulties, which looks like we have a sustainable financial future when we look at that. And then we're trying to stay ahead of the industry trend, try to address these future issues ahead. The survey is available in English and Spanish and open through February 25th. And we really want to get some very good feedback. And this feedback will actually help us to refine our short-range transit plan, as Director Sarah mentioned. And we actually will review and revise, refine our operational plan every year, even every quarter or semi-annually. For example, if we look at our airport express bus, we experience high demand of the ridership. Then we can immediately jump in, to add more, frequency in that, specific route. And right now, when we reduce 3%, plan to reduce 3% of service for the commute routes primarily, and we will be able to put that back ASAP, because like earlier I said, our staff shortage issue will be significantly mitigated once we have more bus operators on board next month. And so far the survey is very good, because as of Friday of last week, we have had more than 300 responses to this survey. This community is so active or supportive of public transit. And I had the pleasure to speak in front of City of Sacramento's Council's workshop on transportation. And I shared lots of our information with them, and we certainly would like to work with county staff on the climate change plan. And I think we will be a major partner on that, because in the countywide, 56% of the GHG emission come from the transportation sector. And the best or the most effective way to address GHG reduction is through the public transit and active transportation, biking and pedestrian. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my remark and I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Henry. Any questions or comments for our general manager? I know we have one public comment. Tabitha?
I think he put his hand down.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Oh, wait, I lied. Hold on just a second. Jeff Tartagia.
Okay. Welcome
My
back.
public comment is thanking you, Henry, for being at the active transportation. I couldn't be at the county one because their Senate was having some hearings to testify at. But I also want to thank your staff for putting out more messages about where they need to check on for bus cancellations and other things that are going on. And my last thought is are you really going to reconvene after you have closed session? And is there a purpose for it? And I will end.
Wasn't aware we had a closed session.
We don't have today.
Okay, sometimes I miss stuff, but it's on our agenda, but there's no item there.
No, there's no closed session.
It's just, yeah, it's a placeholder in case we do.
Yeah.
All righty then.
Okay, looks like Nick Bryant has his hand up.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, I also do agree, Henry. I'd like to thank you for talking about a couple of things about where to check for cancellations. If I check for cancellations, it would have to be online, right? Is that true, Henry?
Yes, it's online, and also, we put in the public notice, and we push that through our, I think we have some lots of phone connect to our system. We push that through your phone too, and so Nick, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure, you will get information, timely. We will talk to you, personally. Very soon, our staff. And I want you to notice, we just sent our police officer to the bus stop you mentioned. We know that location very well. We know the situation there, quite often. We send our police officers there quite often. But after you spoke, we already sent a police officer there on the way.
Over at Louis Lando?
Yes.
And also, I get it. It's an issue. I get it's a problem. James Boyle, I want to thank you for talking about about the changes to the bus routes. But I am on board with you, and I'm on board with all of you guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nick. Ooh. Is there any other public comment, Tabitha?
I don't see any more public comment.
All right. Then let's move on to the last item.
Okay, the last item is number 9, reports, ideas, and questions from directors, if any.
I'm seeing a bunch of shaking heads, no raised hands, so I think that's a no. And
I wanted to, if I could just apologize and add about the YouTube link. Dan Pearson did message me at 5:43 that he did create a new live stream and that it was live on YouTube. So it was shortly after the meeting started.
Okay, good. And as always, that's recorded. So if you missed the first part, you can go back and see it.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, seeing nothing else, We've had a great meeting, and with that, I will adjourn. Go kiss your sweethearts.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks, Steve. Bye.